Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve. Yule and stuff. Earthquakes in China. And I guess if that's not enough, there's still some crazy shit happening in Israel and Ukraine, and COVID numbers are up. And Exceptional Radio. I'm really interested in this crazy meteorological bullshit that's happening in China right now, and geological stuff that's happening in China right now. Because right now it's really cold. It's like 15 degrees in northern China, in most of China, and then in the most northern portions of China, touching into, I guess, way eastern Russia, it's like negative degrees, and all this stuff is just kind of swirling up there in the Arctic. And then over here in America, there's a big chunk of North America, like starting from Alaska, swooping all the way down into the Rockies, and in most of Western Canada, that's 15 degrees, but just above that in the Arctic, it's sub-zero. And then there's this weather pattern that's just swirling and pulling all this moisture up into Hudson Bay. And then, of course, the prediction that I'm looking at right now, the forecasting, is that this thumb of cold is just going to keep sweeping further east, but it might kind of pick up and move back up into Canada. I'm crossing my fingers that it goes up into Canada, but I'd also like to see some really cold weather, I'm not going to lie. But this thing in China that's so crazy, though. So there was this earthquake last week, and it was right around the time that apparently their electrical grid started to fail, and because they have centralized heating, a lot of the centralized heating and a lot of their big complexes also started to fail because of the increased demand across like all of centralized housing in China. I guess it's really messed up because places were freezing, and I was looking at images of these I guess apartment buildings that look like the set out of a movie. They don't look real. And I see these images of people trying to get in and out of buildings. They're like just like chiseling away at snow and ice. And it's not a winter wonderland. Images from universities show people trying to walk from one building to another and getting swept away by the wind because all of the surfaces are covered in ice.
Jesus Christ.
It's like ice formed by friction from the wind. So it's not just like some weak ass ice they can break with some salt. It's so cold that salt water freezes.
Whoa, that's really cold, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, like, people getting blown away. Like, seriously, imagine walking across, like, campus and seeing, like, stepping out the door and holding onto a rail and then really holding on. And then you see somebody just, like, bracing for impact, sliding backwards up a hill. Like, that kind of stuff. It doesn't make sense. Like, straight up, if I believed in God, these people are being punished for something. That's, like, the kind of... That's the kind of imagery that I was seeing, like terrifying shit. Because China is, for the most part, extremely developed. Where there's a campus, that means it's a developed place. But
well, like it says, 134 people have died effectively because of the freezing weather.
Yeah, or
the earthquake.
Yeah, both.
Like the combination, like one or the other, making it hard to
they can't get emergency crews
or help them
in because the roads are so fucked up that they can't travel at normal speeds. Some of the roads are so icy that giant convoys are traveling, and they have to have limited amounts of traffic because while the roads are designed to handle, excessive amounts of traffic, they're also expecting it to be moving, not kind of stationary. Chinese engineering has been wrought with some plagued with some issues lately.
Well, and that's like not even a month ago, there were major floods in Eastern Africa that hit multiple countries, like, and it looks like it's displaced at least 500,000 people, and killed like a lot of people too, which is where I don't know if it's just this time of year and this being the like storm season, or it does. I think part of it is the awareness in that, if things were more isolated, the people going through that shit would feel like the entire world is ending because they didn't know that parts of the world were fine. But if you know that like multiple parts of the world are like having these like century storms that also, when they coincide, it does feel like an angry deity or some shit. But also when you're like able to be in a place where you're not in it, but able to read about it, it's like, I think one's mindset is going to color how they see that situation in terms of like, if one is prone to believing in punishment type situation, that's what they're going to see, where it's like when I look at the numbers proportionally, it's like, it's a lot of people, but in the context of those continents, it's not. There's been like storms that have killed exponentially more people, and I think it felt similarly like apocalyptic when it happened. Like, I don't know. I think it's like once you get past 100 people, anything feels like apocalyptic. It don't matter if it's like 100 or 100,000. It's gonna feel like an end of the world type disaster when it's happening. Just knowing about it, and then knowing how frequently that shit happens, but that we've also hit 8 billion people. It's like, not to minimize any of those deaths. It like the world goes on in a way that it's easy to like, every time something like that happens, it's easy to get like wrapped up in the notion that like, oh, this is the one, this is the big one, or like this is the like big flood, or this is like the big conflict or anything, to the point that when you brought up Ukraine and Israel, it's like, oh yeah, that shit's happening. Like,
Still,
not to say that, again, I think I don't actively avoid news about those things so much as I'm not watching media outlets that are going to like feed me information about something without me changing the channel quickly. Like YouTube it's not really a feed so much as like it's like a buffet of feeds. And if you let the algorithm take you down all the different feeds, you may end up in some very paranoid, hyper fixated state that is on Christmas Eve, like the world's gonna end. You know what I mean? And that's where I think it's like, it's definitely not weird for you to know about China. You know what I mean? Like, but if it was like some random person who has no ties to China and they were like hyper fixated on it, like the fact, I think, not to say that I'm actively avoiding anything. It's just, I've not even heard about the stuff in China until you told me about it, which is also where I'm like, this is interesting to see the differences in media when somebody has a connection to something, when you're like seeking it out, or like your feed is like giving you things that you have connection to, that it's my feed or my, like, it didn't even come up in YouTube, because ever so often, like, natural disaster shit will come up in my feed. And then what I started realizing is like the natural disaster stuff that was coming up in my feed was meant to make people think that it was Armageddon, which I'm like, why is it feeding me this shit? Like, what does the algorithm think of me to be thinking that I'm gonna like see an earthquake in China, or a deep freeze in China, and think this is the last one, even though China's population is still growing. This is the big one.
So,
but that's the type of shit it was feeding me, which is why I'm like,
now I'm seeing pictures of ships that are frozen in water, like some are on their sides. They're just frozen out in the harbors.
Where are you seeing this?
The Watchers News, Old Mission Gazette.
Because I guess, where do you?
I just looked for China earthquake blizzard just now.
Well, I mean, like, when you first saw it, like, where did you see the news? Were you seeking, like, do you seek out news about China daily? Like, because that's where I'm like,
oh no.
On the one hand, I don't seek out news about like local shit, let alone a specific country, which is also where I'm like, what in your feed brought that information to you? Was it like Facebook, Twitter, like, where, because that's interesting to me in terms of like, I don't know if you can remember how you first stumbled upon the information, but it's like, oh, did your relative send you something, or like your mom,
no, the first things that I saw were videos of frozen China, and I thought, well, that's crazy. And
on like YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube.
Okay.
YouTube Shorts, and then from there I started seeing, and because of the algorithm, it started exposing me to more actual videos, not just shorts. And there were, lots of stuff that I can't understand, but I can see somebody being blown across a campus. That stuff's very real. But yeah, no. YouTube has just been showing me all sorts of stuff of frozen blizzard China, calling it the worst.
You know what? Now that you say it, I do remember a video of like a girl on the street being blown away. Like, it was just like one person.
Yeah.
But this was like 2 weeks ago. And I don't remember.
No, like last.
If the captions were in English or not yet. So that's where I'm like, I think I do remember seeing something like that, but like, I didn't go down that rabbit hole because I was like, oh, that's crazy. But it also, I can't tell if this is like a big deal or not, because it was only like one person in the video. So I wasn't like, oh, this is like some shit that's like happening to an entire region. Because again, I couldn't understand or read the captions.
No, this is like, it's happening to an entire, like, the earthquake was out in Western China. But all the really cold stuff is just the northern band of China. It's just fucking cold there. Like, real cold. Don't go outside cold. And then the wind. It's crazy.
Well, so here's also, I'm not, this is on the same area.
I also just spend a lot of time looking at the website windy.com, because they've got the prettiest pseudo real-time weather presentation that I found.
Well, only reason I was asking is because increasingly I'm unable to like use YouTube as a media outlet, or like a way to consume media, because everything is an ad masquerading as a video.
Yeah.
Or it's a, did you say windy.com?
Yeah.
Like, oh, WIND?
WINDY.
Okay.
Yeah, Yeah. No,
But it's
dude,
like everything's a Patreon funnel now.
I hate it. It sucks so much. I've got to clear my my browsing history all the time so that I don't get fed all sorts of random crazy crap, like you're saying, paranoid, just driven insane because they're wound up in their micro bubble. But I have to clear my watch history all the time, and then I find myself just refreshing 3 or 4 times, and then it'll just show me the video. And then of course there's like the placed ad for like a VPN or Patreon or whatever it is. Thanks to the sponsor, whatever the crap that ends up being.
Yeah, I don't see the actual commercials that are before and during because I use like multiple ad blockers and that shit still works against YouTube. So fuck them and their anti-ad blocker bullshit. But it's like every
they're targeting they're targeting uBlock Origin. Almost specifically.
It's like they have ad block plus detectors too.
Yeah.
But it's like if you use, I think it's 2, you can get around their ad block and ad block detector, their ad block preventer or whatever they're trying to do to make it so that people can't use it. But it's like you said, there's one specifically that they have the code against. So if you use like other ones in combination, then you can disable the ads. But it's like the actual content still has the person who's making the video do the native advertising. And it's like they have to like market, and it's still known that it's an advertisement. But the fact that everything is just trying to, I know I've seen at least a couple creators lament the fact that because they have advertisers that they have to get the schedule to, that it like makes it difficult for them to keep up with their production schedule, but also stay interested in the content that they're trying to create. So that's where I'm like, advertising is killing content in a way that I don't think the advertisers care in the outcome, but it's like, it's impossible to watch shit on YouTube and not be advertised at, even when you have your ad blocks on, because again, it's like when they have the every fucking content creator that's monetized does their own ads as well as the shit that is the commercials that are on top. And so that's where I'm like, what the fuck happened to content in terms of like, you know, I know intrinsically what happened, but this curve of everybody trying to make content to get to a place where they can make ads or become monetized through ads, and then in the process, it's like now you're just doing like a HelloFresh commercial that's masquerading as your original content, or like a fucking Manscaped or fucking MeUndies, whatever the fuck bullshit is being advertised, and it's just that commercial masquerading as the original content. And that's what frustrates me in terms of like, I just can't watch. I can't watch stuff and let the algorithm take charge, because it's only going to feed me more shit that's advertisements masquerading as content. Because that's where I'm like, it's I don't mind if somebody who I watch frequently advertises their own product, especially, and it's like, okay, let's say it's a 10-minute video and their ad is a minute long, 10% of their content as ads for their own shit, I don't care. That's not a big deal because they need to make money. But when it's like 30% of the content and it's not even their product, and they really clearly don't believe in the shit and they're just doing it for money, it's like, why am I even there at that point? Because I came for the thing that is slowly being whittled away and replaced with ads. And over time, if I keep doing that, it's going to be half, if not mostly, advertisements. And then I'm just there getting advertised at when I was originally there for some specific content. And that's where I'm like, I find myself not consuming the same type of content, but it's almost like every day is an ethnography into what's happening around me because I can't dissociate and disconnect with what's happening around me in terms of like, if I don't know what kids and our grandparents have to like deal with every day, then I'm putting myself in a position of not being able to like help people in getting secure because there's constant updates into the types of threats that happen in the digital age and the information age, but they also don't go in the same route that one would normally think. In that, like, for example, there was this period where YouTube videos that were made for kids would be like front loaded with shit that if you look at it for like half an hour, a parent is going to stop paying attention. And then in that last 15 minutes of the 45-minute content, they would put some like really disturbing shit that would be like not sexual or anything like that, but it would be like trying to get the kids to hurt themselves or like consume, like, oh, go eat a Tide Pod or some shit, where you're like, that type of attack on American youth coming in a way where it's like meant to lull the parents away and meant to get the parents in a situation where they're feeling comfortable with the content enough so that when the attack comes, the person levying the attack knows that the parent isn't there because they executed in a way, did it. No, they know enough about American psychology that it works on 99% of all parents. If you just like front load again with like 30, whatever, however they were doing these attacks. And it's like, if you don't know that shit's happening around you, you don't have to like go track down every single attack. But the way that like information is being distributed, it affects my parents. It affects my sibling. It affects like, it's going to affect my nephew. So like knowing how other people have to interact with this stuff, I also have to be news, quote unquote, has evolved in a way that is not obviously not good, but things can be give the appearance of being news when really it's just gossip, or even worse, rumor that is like not founded on anything. Because at least gossip has some semblance of a fact or some sort of truth in it. Not to say that gossip is a good thing, but when people are spreading rumors, it gets to a point where it's like, that's definitely not news. But when rumors can be made to look like news, then people will end up consuming rumors all day long, feeling like it's news, even down to like, it don't have to be relationship type shit. Like when Elon starts talking about like, oh, we got acquired at 420. No, that's a rumor. You just made that shit up. And then people are going to spread this rumor for 24-hour news cycle, at least, if not a full week news cycle. Your stock's going to get impacted potentially in a positive way because of this rumor. And by the time people find out the truth, it don't fucking matter if you got actually acquired at 420 or not. So the rumor mill and the rumor cycle obviously is like where a lot of quote unquote news has been focused in the last 40 years, 50 years almost now. It's really like getting to be close to 50, but it's really more in the 40s. But it's like cable news and gossip / rumor news has become more prevalent in the news cycles than fact-based or apolitical, unbiased reporting, which I don't know if that shit ever existed. There's like a romanticization of the 60s as if like Walter Cronkite was that, but I don't know, I wasn't alive, so I can't say if that shit was real or if it was just like people not having access to the fucking full set of information to know if Cronkite or, those types of people were like being manipulated with money or whatever behind the scenes. So I know what has happened, but this is where it's also like when people then will say, "Oh, I don't trust the mainstream media," then they'll go fucking look at YouTube for their news. And then it's like, "Oh, I guess these people aren't that smart." And then you have to like it's not that you can't find good information on YouTube because I have at least a few sources where I go to them for content. That's what I end up consuming most of the time I'm on the platform. But it's like knowing what YouTube is doing to their own platform, I know it's not going to be easy for other people to find that type of credible information source, let alone know if they're looking for it or not.
Yeah, there's definitely some crazy shit going on in China. Like this is the kind of stuff that doesn't even most of this like the shorts. That's all someone's cell phone. Like not even doctored with like squiggly lines or any kind of accents whatsoever. It's just someone basically saying, "Holy crap, look at this. That lady's getting blown across the campus. Look at that guy. He's on his face."
Well, it's all that to say CNN is like
not covering anything.
Not covering it at all. Like what you're talking about, it definitely should be more important than like, oh, well, okay, well, Beijing records longest cold wave in modern history. So it is like buried among NFL shit and like a Christmas Story, Die Hard stuff. It's like Notre Dame has a fucking picture, Trump has a picture. But Beijing is like the far right, like column, very minimal, 2, 4, 6, 8 words in their headline.
It's like hurricane force winds jewelry with blizzard and post earthquake. That's what's going on there. That's the crazy part. Like,
well, it's just frustrating because I'm like, there remains found in wooded area identified as those of 5-year-old boy who went missing 20 years ago, and it's like, is that really national news? Is that really national news in terms of when you got that story with more coverage effectively than what's happening in Beijing? It's easy for people to get wrapped up in American propaganda and not see Chinese people as human beings when you have 170 something people dying and American media is like actually covering somebody that died 20 years ago who was a child who is nameless in the fucking headline. So it's just a 5-year-old boy, not even going to give the boy the respect of telling us his name when he died. So that's where I'm like, the way this shit is being presented, I don't want to say schizophrenic because schizophrenic is like,
oh man,
not really accurate.
The entirety of their like battery powered everything, all of those batteries are going to suffer in this kind of cold. none of
This
those
is so
vehicles are going to
wild.
power up when they finally clear all the snow and ice. None of those vehicles are going to power up. They're going to have like spent all the remaining electron transfer, trying not to solidify and crystallize. And then they're going to rupture. They'll be lucky if some of those things don't just explode. Okay, so this is a perfect example of why electric vehicle technology will never fully replace the need for like gasoline or diesel vehicles. Is that there are still going to be regions of the world where, lo and behold, it gets too cold to operate electric vehicles, at least with batteries. They might have like gas or diesel generators that run electric motors, which I'm totally all about. But yeah, that's the reason right there that they're not. It's never going to be completely. They can't get rid of internal combustion. Just too much energy potential, too much stored energy potential per any given volume. It's also the reason that steam trains haven't disappeared is when like in the Rockies, when it gets really bad, they have to send in steam trains because the electric trains don't run, even running diesel.
My thing is like, it seems like there should be some sort of construction of that frame so that the cold makes it run better, and that if all of the
I think that's a different
parts,
chemical composition though that makes the batteries work at the lower temperatures.
oh for sure, for sure, but I'm not talking about the battery part, but it would be like all of the parts that get hot from friction in the drivetrain, and like other parts of, because I know when it's like electric, there aren't that many parts, but maybe they could add some in like a winter.
Oh yeah, like a winterizing, like the equivalent of gluing on like a silicone heating blanket to the whole.
Yeah, that also charged the battery while it like.
I think Rivian does that. They built in some kind of like antifreeze coolant line system into their batteries to prevent them from getting too cold or too hot. And it also is one of the reasons they have pretty decent range for the size of their and mass of their vehicles. It'll be pretty interesting. Like, so this is actually one of the reasons that I think that bless Toyota for continuing their work on hydrogen and ammonia and methane driven engines, because it turns out there's a lot of those things out in space, like on moons that for whatever reason people think we're going to send, I don't know, mining operations to. Because if you've got lakes of liquid methane and you already have a Toyota engine, and you definitely want the Toyota engine because it'll last forever or something, but if it can run on, the liquid that forms in the lakes of a moon, lo and behold, that's a really useful motor. And then hydrogen's, the most abundant, it's just the most abundant anything. You can find it everywhere. Toyota built an engine that runs off of hydrogen. It's just not efficient to extract it on Earth. And I was reading that they have an ammonia engine, which is just insane to me. I'm not even sure how that even works. Probably the same way as the other engines, but they all require really specific atmospheric conditions to run at highest efficiency, which is why I think that that's the kind of thing that will have to be engineered for different climate regions. As the Earth's climate becomes a little bit more chaotic and we experience more extreme weather, at some point things are much more purpose driven in their development. Like, I don't think there's a one size fits all electric vehicle there is for like a city car, something that only travels like 40 miles a day. That makes sense not to have a giant vehicle, but not when there's like a freaking earthquake that compromises infrastructure and prevents emergency crews from accessing the areas that need the most help, or when the physical infrastructure fails and they don't have electricity or gas, can't run the heaters.
But also, it's like, why wouldn't, if there are regions that have these cold issues, like what would be the problem with creating or making like an electric vehicle that had treads? Because it's like,
I think it would just be special tires, but yeah, no, sure.
I mean, yeah, it could be special tires just the same, but like a vehicle with treads has the capacity to go over rough terrain in a way that like a tired vehicle kind of.
Oh, sure. No,
can.
I'm sure that that's also possible. I think that's really, it just comes down to the battery. They need to have batteries that can operate in cold temperatures. Right now, all the batteries tend to lose like, anywhere from 20 to 40% output when the temperatures get below freezing. It's really kind of rough.
So Alibaba has everything apparently.
Yeah, but Alibaba's not going to be able to get anyone in Shandong their freaking tracked electric vehicle right now. No one's getting into Shandong right now.
Oh, and these things only could carry like one person as a passenger anyway, but it's like,
well, that's like, they'll get like
the prototype.
They'll get like 4 or 5 people on one of those things and make it work. They'll figure it out. I think that's going to be the big challenge, is creating like there's some brilliant battery engineer out there who's working on this problem of how do they create a battery like with a chemical composition that has a broader operational temperature range, something that can withstand negative 40 degrees sustained for like days at a time, and can also operate well into like Death Valley temperatures, where sitting over the rocks, it's going to be exposed to 140, 150, 160 degrees. That's a 200 degree temperature range. I'm talking Fahrenheit for anyone who's wondering, but that's still a huge temperature range. I think it's possible. It has to be possible. We just don't have the next material revolution will occur, and somebody will figure out how to make a battery that can do that. We just don't have that now. Also, the battery technology that exists now is really, it can't stand water. And water at freezing temperatures are like a real big issue.
Yeah, I'm wondering how long it's going to take to fix that, or get like to a point where the issue with the water damage is like you can't guarantee the enclosure is going to protect the battery forever, because like I saw a video with someone. This is the YouTube algorithm at work. It was feeding me videos about like people who had to get their batteries replaced, and it was costing like more than the actual car cost.
Yeah.
Which is like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. So it's like, if the car costs 55,000, you can't charge 60,000 for a fucking battery. Doesn't make any goddamn sense.
They had to take the whole car apart to get to the battery compartment.
I mean, again, it's like it doesn't matter what they had to do or what happened. That's bullshit. There's
Yeah.
something fucked up there. That's wrong. That you can't do that. Because that's where I'm like, at some point, some fucking asshole thought that was okay. Be- and it got approved where
Well, there's no used. That can't be a used car after that because it costs more used than it does new because somebody has to buy the used car. Then
right,
eventually they end up replacing it with like a battery that costs more than a new car. Double purchase.
Exactly. So that's where I'm like, you can't have one part of a vehicle cost more than the vehicle by itself. Like it just doesn't make any economic, mathematic, or logistic sense. Like, but the fact that they were trying to do it is, I think, representative of this era where like people, or not people, companies will pull that shit until they get called out. And then Americans are too docile and not good enough at math in general to like be aware of the times where that shit happens in other places. It's very obvious in a car when the battery like is so glaringly more expensive than the entire vehicle when you're trying to get the battery replaced.
Man.
But other shit happens like that in America where Americans don't push back, and I think it's good that they're pushing back on the battery bullshit, but I also feel like they're gonna use that capitalist bullshit as an excuse to like not improve electric vehicles because the companies are basically trying to like fuck them over at every goddamn turn, as if that's like an electric vehicle problem and not a capitalism problem.
Yeah. You just reminded me of the Volkswagen Phaeton. It was a full-size, executive sedan. It was fully trimmed. I remember they were like $80,000, and really magnificent engine and interiors, and they didn't sell for shit because nobody thought that Volkswagen should be making like a luxury car, an $80,000 car. So Volkswagen's Auto Group decides to rebrand it as the Continental GT, the Bentley, and lo and behold, it sells like hotcakes for 3 times as much, I think. 3 or 4 times as much. Same car. Like...
It's wild.
Like, all of the part numbers for the Bentley engine are shared with the Volkswagen engine. They're like Volkswagen common parts.
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing,
Well, it's interesting because there's some people out there who are willing to overpay for something when the original version of it
for the logo, basically.
Yeah, for the logo, because they didn't expect Volkswagen to make a car that would be able to, be better than an Audi A8. But then, someone was like, "Hey, if we slap this thing on it, we can charge like."
Oh wait, but isn't the Audi effectively a trimmed down Bugatti? Is that the one?
No,
Who makes Bugatti? I forget.
Bugatti is I think Bugatti is still its own design team. There's a bunch of there's an Audi and a Lamborghini that are also shared, and a Porsche that are all share a platform with the Volkswagen.
Volkswagen. And once again, so what they do is they make it's the Bugatti division, but then they strip it down and use it for Volkswagen. So it's like that.
Oh yeah, they do. There's a lot of division sharing, interdivision sharing. Like the Volkswagen Touareg, which isn't available here anymore, is like also like a Lamborghini and a Porsche and an Audi. It doesn't make any sense, but if they can sell a Volkswagen's SUV for $1 million, then more power to them.
I mean, but I feel like that part's disingenuous in terms of like, yeah, you can take Lamborghini parts, but if it's not hand assembled, it's not a fucking Lamborghini. Like if it's like
Sure.
line assembled Lamborghini parts, it's like
I think they're just putting Lamborghini panels onto a Volkswagen. It's the same thing that they do with the Audi. I think it's like Q8 or something, Q7, but it's just a Volkswagen Touareg with dressed like an Audi. And
well,
the Porsche,
at that point, it's like the best kit car you can get.
Sure.
It's not the
sure.
Which I don't know if these, knowing that the divisions are like losing money on these things because then they're taking the technology and putting it in other vehicles. That's where I'm like,
Volkswagen Auto Group is like losing money. They reported like quarterly losses. They are having issues because they're trying to transition everything into electric, and it's just not working. The market's not supporting it. Like GM, because they're trying to move towards electric, they're getting away from CarPlay and Android Auto, and they're trying to develop their own software system because cars have to last, I think the average now is 8 years. A few years ago it was 12, but 8 years is the average long-term vehicle owner, which means a computer has to last 8 years. The software has to be, fresh enough that somebody wants to keep using it, and it's hard to keep up because aftermarket head units now come with advanced infotainment systems, and they can be swapped out in a matter of an hour or two if you know what you're doing. And it's really kind of interesting because it's this place where consumer computer technology and automotive technology they're not playing nice. Cars have to last. Computers have to be replaced every couple of years if one is keeping up with technology.
Dude, Volkswagen owns fucking damn near everything now.
Yeah, Volkswagen.
The only reason I got confused is because they own Audi too.
Yeah. Well, Volkswagen Auto Group is like, I think it's like between Volkswagen and Toyota for the world's largest auto manufacturer every year, and it's just like, it's like a couple hundred that determines who actually gets the title. Volkswagen's huge. I mean, immensely huge. Like, they've got different market Golfs. Like, I think in Canada it's the Rabbit, and in they've got all the, and then they're, they have different engines for different markets that we don't see, like much smaller engines. In America, we get all the big engines because, America. But then there are all the really amazingly hard-tuned engines that only Europe gets to see. I'm really curious though, like how, because so like Ford's F-150 hybrid truck is like the least reliable like Ford vehicle, and their Lightning truck is, they've been reducing production
because they can't sell them. They're too fucking expensive.
It's too expensive. People that need a truck don't actually want this thing because it can only do half of what it promises. The electric Silverado's not doing well.
Dude, it's more than a fucking like luxury car, and that's where I happen to. This again, the algorithm has been feeding me videos about the mass repos that are happening and like in line to happen.
Yeah,
and they Ford Lightnings and F-150s are piling up on the dealership lots because nobody's buying them at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not moving.
Yeah, it's pretty scary actually, because when these things just sit there, eventually it becomes good for the consumer, but it also becomes bad for the consumer because if the forecasts are bad, then they adjust their production rates, and then there are less hours for people to work, and then those local economies suffer. Then there's a domino rally that occurs.
Well, but they can't reverse this course because of EU regulations, where it's like they're not going to be able to keep making petrol vehicles or producing them, and so whether the market agrees or not, this is coming, like, this is the direction it's headed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the market is going to fight it and then try to like push regulators back. But I don't know so I just saw that there was like a news story that briefly ran about the ozone layers on track to be fixed now, which is where if that happened, regulators are never going to capitulate on the climate change shit now because it worked. So all their fucking regulations to help the climate worked to enough degree for them to keep doing it. Europe's not going to stop. Like, Europe is not going to backtrack on that shit. Like, America might have if enough right-wing presidents were in a row. But I don't think that the country is that right-wing and that unaware of the climate change, because enough people in America have had the climates in which they have resided their entire lives shift enough to where they can't deny anymore. And they'll reminisce and lament about things, how they've changed, and in the process, like, talk around it. But even they can't deny that the climate changes, whether it's whether it's because of oil consumption or fossil fuel consumption or not, it fucking changed.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about it getting warmer in winter and having shorter freezing periods. The crazy rain stuff is kind of fucked up, but I'm still not complaining about that either, because that just makes for like bountiful tomato harvest.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not complaining.
We just happen to be like have lucked out geographically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't even really luck, because this is where I've been, people have always talked about how eventually California is going to like fall into the ocean, or like the South is the way the Louisiana map is completely different than what we grew up seeing, because
coastal flooding, inland flooding.
So I've always been of the mind that like, oh, this place was flattened out by glaciers. So this is like the Midwest by Indiana and the Great Lakes is effectively like one of the safest places on the planet. So I've always been like, this is where I'm trying to be, just for the sake of like actual long-term climate. Like, it's the best place for the year-round, least extreme weather.
Yeah.
Because again, you get like the wildfire season if you're not worried about California falling to the ocean. That shit is fucking every year. I don't have to worry about that shit in Indiana. Michigan.
I'm gonna take a trip down to deliver some vinyl, some LPs to Ryan, our correspondent down in Daytona Beach, here in a couple of weeks actually. And I'm excited because I've never been to Florida, and I want to see this place that apparently the bedrock is Swiss cheese, where when there's a huge storm coming in, that like every so often there's like geysers form out in the middle of nowhere. I know I'm not going to see like, all of Florida, and I'm not going to get to see like deep swamp area Florida, but I'm excited. Plus, I also imagine that Florida, like California, is going to disappear into the ocean at some point. So I'd like to see it at least once.
Yeah, it's definitely like one of those places where it rains way more than you assume based on how people talk about it. Like, isn't it? I don't know. Is it the Sunshine State or is that California? We either one. It's definitely like fucking way more rain than they want to act like it is. Um, and yeah, there's the northern parts are definitely more swampy, where it's like a completely different almost climate when you get to Miami and like the Keys and shit. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely an interesting place to go and explore at least a couple times, but the I haven't been back in a long time just because you don't. It's not something you need to keep going back to.
So I saw this YouTube short. It was this Australian guy saying, it's like, I don't know why you Americans are so afraid of Australia. We don't have puddle gators. And then he gets out of his or moves his camera around his window, and there's an alligator in this mud puddle, this water puddle in the road. This like giant pothole. Just a alligator hanging out in the road. And he's like, we don't have puddle gators. like,
Yeah, Florida, man.
Florida. And Florida. So I was kind of casually following the development of the Florida Man games, but I lost track of it all. I kind of want to know how it went, but I don't. Or if it hasn't happened yet, then I kind of want to know, but not really. Not even sure how something like that could work.
Have you ever seen I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker?
Oh man, that movie's hilarious.
Where they have the fucking Hood Olympics.
Yeah.
Yeah, shit's classic.
Oh,
I feel
man.
like that's the other end of the scale with the Florida Man games. It's like, well, I don't know if you ever saw. Did I ever show you Slap Mountain?
Slap Mountain.
Yeah, it's like the actually funny version of slap fighting where they don't take the shit too seriously, but it's like um a bunch of fucking yokels, and it's like in somebody's backyard, and they set it up in like a backyard wrestling ring. Because then they have you seen the power slap shit, man?
Yeah, I've seen the power slap league
So that's
stuff.
the most serious bullshit where it's obviously a ridiculous, dumb, idiotic thing. It's not even a sport at that point. Excuse me. But Dana White ruined it where how slap fighting wasn't meant to be serious. And then they started to get more and more serious, and it became less fun and more worrisome.
I don't know that some of that
fun.
Russian stuff that's not power slap.
Yeah,
that stuff looks pretty serious. That's like the most hardcore shit.
I think somebody died already from that.
I remember watching one where some dude went in where he pumped his arms up full of that weird gelatin stuff.
Oh, synthol.
Synthol, yeah. So he looked big and beefy, but when he slapped the guy, he just shook like a jelly roll. And then the guy smacked him really hard, and it kind of reminded me of that Simpsons episode when Homer's in the hospital and he's like touching his belly. He's like, "Ooh, look at that flubber fly." You can see the ripples in the dude's arms as he gets slapped and flings back into his people. I'm not sure how that's a sport.
It's not.
It's
not.
It's like quick draw boxing.
It's definitely not a sport.
It's
you can make it look like a sport,
yeah,
with all the production and the referees and shit. It's definitely not a sport though, which is what that's where I'm going with the Slap Mountain is embracing the ridiculousness of it, and they know it's not a sport, and they make fun of themselves in the process. It's not serious. And
episode
that's
1,
okay.
Red Solo Cup smacked by Big James.
Yeah, shit's fucking hilarious. But that's where
holy crap, this is 20 minutes long.
Oh yeah, man. They go into like
Oh, it's like
plot lines.
yeah, they're making it like a whole on UFC, WWF type
Oh yeah.
thing.
Yeah. It's actually still funny though, where again,
This is it's a tiny man versus a giant. What the hell's wrong with this?
Again,
he can barely get his hand up to the dude's face.
oh yeah. So in this, you should just give it a couple hours where you like watch these and like embrace them for what they are and like never go back to it ever again. It's definitely not like repeat watch worthy, but also it's something where you like lift this rock up and look under it and you're like, oh, what's going on under here? Like, and the fucking bugs crawl around. You're like, okay, that's kind of cool bug, but you can't look too hard. And then the power slap stuff where,
whoa, he knocked the earpiece out of him.
But
both sides.
Are you hearing the commentary or seeing the commentary? Because the commentary is almost more important than the actual slapping with this one. Because that's where again it's like the way that it's happening, they know it's not serious. Whereas power slap, it's too serious. Like this is not a sport. It's not something that some kids should grow up. I want to be in the power slap champ. I want to be in the power slap league. No kid should ever want to do this. I mean, not to say that kids should want to be in the NFL or an NBA, but at least those, at least you can actually make a living destroying your body with those things. Like nobody is.
Oh, that's not cool. He just hit this guy in the back of the jaw with his open palm. Hit him in the neck. His whole neck is
club. That's not legal.
His whole neck is beat red right now. He's probably bleeding out of his ear.
Again, that's where if you club too many times, you get disqualified. So
yeah, this dude has a bunch of broken capillaries on the where his jaw meets his neck.
Do you think that's his worst problem though? Look at him.
No.
Look at him and be honest. That's where again, when you look at these people, you're like, oh, him losing a few brain cells isn't that big of a deal. So it's like you don't feel that terrible when you keep watching these videos and like them slapping the shit out of each other is probably the least damage that they're gonna do to their body that day. When you know that there's like meth labs around and shit. Like, come on, man. I know at least half of those motherfuckers don't have teeth because of meth. So again, those people slapping each other is fucking hilarious because this is like people of Walmart. You know what I mean? Like the people of Walmart. But you look at them and you're like, who can drink all that Mountain Dew? And you're like, that can't be healthy. Where you see somebody at Walmart getting like 16 bottles of Mountain Dew and like 24 bags of fucking Doritos. And
but you know that Red's wife was like this morning. Red's wife was like, or the morning of the shooting, he was like, she says, "Now, Red, I want you to think twice, real hard about this. I don't think this is a good idea. And like, this is my big chance, woman. Get out of my way." That's kind of what I see going on here, or what I imagine happening.
Exactly.
This is my big chance. I can move on to the next stage, and the championship. I could be a champion.
That's exactly, and then those people are like going back to the trailer park. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not like those people are going back to office jobs and then they're worried about somebody seeing them on Slap Mountain and it risking, we're not talking about fucking lawyers or accountants or people who are putting their livelihood at risk by participating in Slap Mountain. And conversely, this might be their big break. I bet half the people on Slap Mountain, this is the most famous they've ever been and the most like not to say that they've never competed before, But the ones that win, this is probably
I hope
the most accomplished they're ever going to be.
They got a picture-in-picture of solo red Solo Cup's wife eating out of a whole ass salad bowl with her bare hands.
And no shade.
No,
but no shade at all. But some people are never gonna like do anything bigger than compete on Slap Mountain, and that's okay. Which is like,
that's fine.
At the same time, this is where I'm like looking under this rock, this culture of what was Slap Mountain, to then take that and try to turn it into a sport is where we've definitely hit end stage capitalism. Like, because I don't know if you see the timestamp. Slap Mountain is like a few years old now at this point.
2 years.
Like, it's not.
Oh no, this is Slap Fight Championship's upload of Slap Mountain episode.
Yeah,
1.
they re-uploaded. So Slap Fight Championship acquired Slap Mountain, and then Power Slap acquired Slap Fight Championship.
Okay. Oh, wow. They're like round 12. He can still barely get his hand up to this guy's chin. Big James just keeps smiling. This isn't even funny anymore. This is just sad. Red Cup's face is so speckled with like burst capillaries right around his ear, right around his jaw. You know the bell? When people talk about getting their bell rung, yeah, his bell looks like it's been hammered.
Yeah.
Oh, he surrendered. He gave up. He can't get hit in the ear again. Again.
And then the announcer's name is like Cream Pie Okerlund.
Oh, they disqualified Big James for having 5 penalties. And so Red Solo Cup does move along in the tournament. It is his big break.
Yeah, and then it's like, I don't know if you've seen the announcer, his fucking stupid haircut. They like give him a really dumb haircut. It's like a chili bowl haircut. Where you're like, there's no way this guy walks around like this all the time. So they're playing like the announcer is clearly a character. His name is not obviously Cream Pie Okerlund. Like, nobody names their kid fucking Cream Pie Okerlund. Like, so there or like Red Solo Cup. That's not his government name. You know what I mean? Like, so,
no, that's that's like his WWF name.
Right. So there is this like pro backyard wrestling showmanship to it where.
Oh, oil! They've got oil wrestling.
Yeah, it's a freak show. It's definitely not. It's like more. Oh yeah. There's characters on there that everybody's like playing, and then they'll get like storylines going with the characters. So there's like, you know how in WWE it would be like if you had like Val Venus or whatever, he had a girl that would come in with him, and that would be,
oh my goodness, here's a guy whose belly is hanging below his belt.
Like Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. So there would be like a man as the wrestler, and then the woman as like the heterosexual pair to let you know this dude fucks, but fucks heterosexually. So it's okay to like try to be like this guy. You're not gonna be gay if you try to be like this guy wearing a fucking spandex suit or whatever, coming out wearing eyeliner. It's okay because he definitely has sex with women. So like that signaling that wrestling had before the women started wrestling, they do that shit on Slap Mountain too, but it's like with women who like have no teeth or some shit where you're like, this is clearly not like, she's like an Alabama 4. So it's not like trying to be like
Oh, Alabama 4. So that's not even a registered like New York or Chicago or LA number at all.
oh God, no. These people are not walking around in LA or New York or Chicago. They're never leaving their own states, let alone going to LA or Chicago or somewhere that's metropolitan. Like you'll never see these people there. But that's why it's fucking amazing because then you can tell it's like, okay, I don't know if you ever watched Reno 911. Like some people can improv these characters, but you know that they're improving them because they like have their teeth or some shit. These are not improv characters. These are people doing WWE kayfabe, but they're like real life fucking mountain people. Like these are definitely like real mountain folk from Appalachia. Like they're definitely homegrown Appalachians where I'm like, or Appalachia. I don't know how they fucking say it. I think it's Appalachia. So it's again, there's this ethnographic element to it, but it's enough fun where you don't feel bad for the people. Like I think the first episode, they're not like as rigorous with the refereeing. So you do kind of end up feeling bad for the small guy by the end. Because he also something's wrong with him where you're like, I don't know if this is like meth or if he has all his chromosomes. Something's definitely off with this guy and he shouldn't be getting slapped. But if he wasn't there getting slapped again, he's probably going to be out doing meth. So then that's where you're like, I don't, it's this like Ouroboros of like feeling bad and then not feeling bad because the circumstances of the people that are slapping the shit out of each other is like, again, this is probably fun for them because life is slapping the shit out of them already. So it's like, I don't know. The only reason I pointed Slap Mountain is because by the time it becomes Power Slap, there's no fun left into it, and it's all trying to be too serious to the point where it's like, I've never watched one episode or one actual competition of Power Slap, whereas like before Slap Fight got acquired by the UFC and became Power Slap, it was like a fun thing to watch because there was still kind of this like it wasn't kayfabe, but again, it's like like even at the level where it wasn't the mountain folks, it's like the people there doing it, what are they gonna be home playing Xbox that weekend? They're not fucking professional athletes. They're not gonna be
Whoa, the hardcore hillbilly knocked out Big James. Oh.
Bro, it's fascinating. That's why I'm like, you can't look away when you know this is there. It's like really hard to look away. That's where I'm like, I won't blame you for watching this shit for like the next 3 or 4 hours.
I'll probably only watch it for the next 5 to 10 minutes.
No, I mean, not to say that you would, but it's like one of those train wrecks where if you've got nothing to do, it can easily eat up a couple hours of your time with the like, you think it can't get more extreme or the way the storylines or whatever build, but then like they bring back somebody from the first episode or the previous. So it's like, it's just enough to keep a person involved, but also fun. And there's like no ads, or like if they do ads, it's for some like fake shit that's not real. So like that type of content is, not to say it's disappearing, but I think it's more and more difficult to find stuff like that where they're making it and it's not being injected with advertisements halfway through. And by the time, like, every time somebody consumes content, it doesn't have to be for self-enrichment. So like, I'm of the mind that like mindless consumption for fun is perfectly a valid reason to do something. Like, as long as it's not the only thing a person does and the only thing a person's doing is mindless vapid shit for fun, then that becomes a problem. But like, doing mindless or consuming mindless shit for fun, for decompression, that's like, I would assume that's a completely normal activity for every single person to do. So that's where, to me, something like Slap Mountain is in that category. I'm not watching it to like become a better human being, or I'm not watching it under the impression that I'm gonna like learn something, or like there's gonna be a Jerry Springer wrap up at the end where I my consciousness escalates some, like maybe even just a little bit. Like, no, this is not about elevating your consciousness or becoming a better person. This is purely mindless fun. But that that desire to have mindless fun, when somebody comes in and tries to monetize that and then it becomes power slap, I feel a certain level of like violation in that the more the things I like become avenues for someone to try to monetize my attention or monetize my time, it becomes more difficult to know when I'm actually in control of my time, or when somebody is like making money off of me and I don't even know it, or like making, if I'm being advertised to, I know someone's making money off of me, but I don't even know why, or like what the implications of that, like, it's I don't think people have ever really had control of the media around them. But when we're given the semblance of control, in terms of like everything we have is a filter, or a media outlet or some sort of platform to give us information. So it makes us think, oh, if I go look at this feed, if I go to this one, I'm controlling my information flow. When in reality, I still don't have any control over it. I'm just controlling this filter. And that level of awareness, it allows me to operate and not be as influenced by the things that I'm consuming, to make me more to give my attention more focus on those things than what I'm actually interested in. But I'm not sure if everyone has that capacity to know when they're watching some or consuming something because they're interested in it, or because it was just what their feed happened to give them, and it's good enough for them not to change what they're consuming.
So I just shared to the Discord a perfect example of something that I'm not interested in, but the feed suggested, and boy, is it just amusing. Birds with arms being the funniest thing ever. And so somebody animated some arms and on birds and gave them little tasks, like birds that want to go outside, but then the storm happens, so they turn around and they give up. They walk back inside their bird coop. Or some rapping parrots. This stuff is just amusing to me. I'm not interested in learning how to do this kind of animation.
So then if you go to that channel, it is basically clickbait to get advertising.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell. So this is also one of those things that's happening it's like scraped content that's put together and potentially with an AI like commentator,
Sure.
and then everything is like either AI generated or scraped images. And these channels are popping up so fast. It's like I have to get them out of my feed and do not recommend more and more frequently. And it's like, yeah, these are all like 10-minute videos. Some of them have millions of views where these look more um
Well,
produced
the doodle
than the other
artist by
ones.
this guy named Leo Partnick, but that's their TikTok thing. But this is Quantastic, which is I'm assuming is
Right, that's what
unrelated.
I'm on Quantastic's page.
Yeah,
That's I'm on their YouTube page, and that's where it's like all of their content is like,
somebody else's content.
yeah. And they did that birds with arms being the funniest things like twice.
Yeah.
So it's like they know that they're farming content or farming clicks. And if you watch I bet if you watch all of the content on this channel, you wouldn't learn anything that's actually useful ever. Like all of this is going to be information that is amusing, but none of it is actually useful information that's ever going to be like applied in anyone's life ever, which is fine. But this is the type of channel where I'm like, somebody's making money off of effectively creating attention deficit disorder by way of not knowing if this is important or not. Like, because if you there's effectively no difference in actually having ADD or ADHD if you just have to constantly sift through bullshit information to finally get to what you're looking for. Like you might as well have ADD if you're only consuming information that you're looking for like 10% of the time, and 90% of the time it's like either sifting through this shit or consuming it because it was suggested, and then you click on it and consume it because it's good enough. Like that, which again, it's fine if that person's time is being meant to be spent that way. But if you were like looking for something and you're like, oh, I'm going to, uh, like I saw a video about modding cars. I'm like, okay, this modification could be beneficial, or I could see how this thing works, and it may make me think this is not something I want to do to my car. Whether I do it or not, it gives me the capacity to like look at my car in a different way. And the outcome is like, either I can do this thing or not. Whether I do it or not is not important in the fact that the video gave me new information in a way where I'm like, this could potentially apply to my life if I wanted to. Whereas this other shit, it's definitely not gonna like it. It can't apply to my life. So that knowing that people are being inundated with shit that is like the first few years of the internet being like fun cat videos and like time wasting shit is not not a bad thing. But when advertisement doesn't care and things become this time wasting shit because it gets more clicks and gets more advertising dollars, none of these people care about the net outcome. They only care about their individual channels. And that's where the cumulative effect is a bunch of dumb fucking people. And I don't, I don't know if the way capitalism doesn't encourage people to care about their effect on the planet or people is sustainable. But at the same time, I don't know if this feels like the end. Like I don't know if this can get worse. How I don't know how much worse can Quantastic get, like in terms of time wasting nonsense videos that really don't. This could potentially not get any worse. So that I think is like the the benefit, the upside. Um, but I'm also like I don't know if kids or if anybody's actually really, some of this feels fake because then you look at their community and they get like less than 50, like some of their shit gets less than 20 comments and they're not getting nearly that many engagements. So if this has 4 million subscribers and they make a post and they only get 590 likes, I think they got a bunch of fake subscribers and a bunch of bots, but the advertisers don't care yet. So this is where like that's one of the things I also look at in terms of, did it get in your feed because it thinks you're interested in it or because a bunch of fake people and a bunch of bots made the algorithms think that other people would be interested in it, and then it got suggested because it's easy to trick algorithms with bots. So
Oh man, I see so many like suggestions for games that I have zero interest in. I'm not gonna play Fortnite. I'm not gonna get into Minecraft. I don't know what half of the anime themed video games are these days, but I'm not gonna play any of them. Like, I just, you got to watch those shows to care enough about to care enough about the characters to play their game. I don't know what those shows are. And it's kind of strange because you think, man, like if I just say not interested enough or don't recommend this channel enough, they'll get the picture, but they don't. It's like those buttons don't do anything.
man, well, the whole reason I'm laughing is because I cannot get Joe Rogan out of my feed ever. It's like no matter how many times I say don't recommend this JRE clips or whatever the fuck is getting around me getting out of my feed the first time, it's like he pops up every 2 days.
See,
it's some shit.
I don't have the Joe Rogan problem. I have the Jordan Peterson problem where I can't get.
Oh, him too.
Yeah,
but
like
he's less frequent for me.
Yeah, I don't see Joe Rogan unless I search for Joe Rogan. But I get these re-uploaded Jordan Peterson quote things. They're only like 2 minutes long. They're longer than a short, and they're definitely not shorts, but they're not the whole video. And I don't know what they are, and I'm not going to watch them. Actually, you know what? It just occurred to me that I did see Joe Rogan on my feed the other day. It's because I was looking for Neil deGrasse Tyson explaining something, and he popped up because, you know, he gave Neil like 4 hours to talk about physics, and that's quite a bit of time for Neil to gloss over a lot of things. I'm sure if he had like 20 plus hours, like he could go in depth and it would be awesome. But like most of the stuff he does is just, you know, a primer, and that's good. I think that's actually what he does best, is prime people to ask more questions, and that's a good thing. That's like a service to humanity.
Well, he's too willing to go out of his specialty,
Yeah.
his area of specialty, and that's what frustrates me about him. Is that's this specific thing he should not be doing if he wants to encourage people to not get wrapped up in the like Joe Rogan nonsense. And that's where I'm like, you know, he should be speaking about
theoretical
planets.
physics.
Not even.
No, I know.
Not even. Not even. No, he's not. He's not a specialist in that, so he should not be speaking on theoretical physics.
He should be talking about
he has
wormhole
exposure
theories.
to it, so he can like entertain some things, but he's not a specialist enough to be fielding questions on theoretical physics in the way that like somebody like Michio Kaku would be, which is why they would come in pairs originally or in panels. But then as people started to focus less and less on credentials, the panels started to becoming individuals, and those people like would start speaking way out of their realm of specialty and then get called out on it, but it's not necessarily their fault that it happened so much as I think it's difficult to be called to do something knowing that if you don't do it, somebody else is going to come in and do a worse job. And I think that they allowed themselves to get deluded into thinking they could not be the person that falls into that speaking out of their expertise trap, and eventually everybody just does it if you talk too much. So that's where Neil definitely he fucking ended up talking too much and undermined his own credibility in the process, which I think Michio stopped before that became a problem for him. And his you could tell his appearances became less and less frequent and shorter because he didn't want to get, I don't know if he wanted to trip up so much as I think it's like easier to not extrapolate too far if you don't have the time. Whereas like on Joe Rogan's show, the extrapolation just goes way too far, and it don't matter if it's Neil or anybody else. Joe will push farther than a scientist should go without the capacity to reference their materials the proper way, the proper time to think through it. And just like talking through stuff is it's not how you deal with big ideas. Like you can't just fucking have a conversation and like figure out a big problem. It takes like a lot of thought and a lot of processing that you can't do while you're having a conversation, which I think is why the Joe Rogan the platform and the way that a show will be 3 hours, it gives the appearance that one would have the capacity to unpack things, but I'm talking days and sometimes weeks or months before the big picture can be understood on a subject. And it's like, I'll use my dissertation for an example. When I'm talking about companies adopting new technology, it was specifically in the context of cryptocurrency, and it was given the context of artificial intelligence and smart hardware, but the focus was on cryptocurrency. But I also couldn't only deal with cryptocurrency or blockchain technology because those weren't the only new technologies emerging at the time. So it took at least 6 months to gather the data, to like look at the data, to see what the people responding were saying. And then it took like another 6 months to interpret that shit. So it's like the idea of like understanding that subject, knowing how long it took my research to do, and then in the process, how long it took for me to understand the implications of the data and to thoroughly unpack it in a way that wasn't just coming through the lens from which I originally approached the question. I learned things about the subject that I only could have learned after the data was collected but I could not have learned those things about the data without months of interpretation. And in that process, it's like, I know that what I did is not enough to generalize to the entire corporate culture. And that's part of the experiment. But it really gave me an insight into how long even minimal experiments in the real world can take that are like only focused on a few subjects, let alone when you start talking about 1,000 subjects or 100,000 subjects and participants. Like, that's why I think a lot of experiments don't get to that number of participants, because data is like really difficult to interpret even with a minimal number of participants. But when you start getting into like, am I interpreting this correctly, or am I imposing things on the data that isn't actually there? It takes a long time to figure that out. And the way that those conversations happen on Rogan's show, it doesn't give either side the time to actually process or unpack the things that are being analyzed, which is also where I'm like, I think it does a disservice to understanding how understanding works when people think that you can just hack your way to understanding a subject by fucking talking to it with somebody else who doesn't understand the subject. Even though one person may be a doctor in something, they're not a doctor in that subject necessarily. So these two people are smart enough, they can figure it out. No, the fuck they can't necessarily. That's not necessarily how things work. But the way that the Rogan experience necessitates closure of conversation, it makes it feel like subjects can be prodded, examined, and then a conclusion determined within just a short 3-hour block of conversation. I mean, think about how many hours have we dedicated to dissecting the Matrix alone, and still 30, 40 hours into our dissection are still figuring out new things about this fictional property, because we're actually unpacking things and not just touching visceral concepts and surface level concepts. Because that's where you can talk about surface level shit and like the things that are not at the lower depths, but it take the way that we effectively predicted the fourth Matrix movie before it was ever announced and before we knew what was happening, because it wasn't that we predicted it, is what we went down all the different avenues, and it was like one of the avenues that we explored was damn near exactly what happened in the fourth movie. And it wasn't the only avenue that we explored, but because we went down so many different avenues and we're like, what could happen if they went this direction, and what could happen if they went this direction, because we also weren't encumbered by a synopsis or by a rumor mill of what could have been or what was going to be. We explored our understanding of that story in a way that took it deep, but it took like 40 hours. And it wasn't like in one show. It wasn't the first show. It wasn't the 6th show. It wasn't the 15th show. It was like the 20th show where we finally would get to that point. But it took that many to keep unpacking further and further. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I'm going to say it's probably more like, 100 hours of Matrix dialogue is interspersed through the hundreds of hours of dialogue that we've created. I think The Matrix and Lost are our two most like commonly referenced like examples of complex narrative, complex visual storytelling. Although the further I get from away from Lost, the harder it is to watch. Whereas I can still enjoy The Matrix. The Matrix still looks really good. There are parts of even Matrix 2 and 3 that are like, they did such a damn good job. Like the stuff that's out today, the stuff that's being made in China or by Disney, sure, it looks great, but they haven't done anything that the Wachowski brothers didn't do.
Well, and what I think you're nailing on is when one first watched Lost, it felt, especially as the seasons moved on, it felt way more sci-fi in the process of watching it. But when I rewatched it recently, it didn't feel like as much that they were trying to focus on the sci-fi so much as like this sci-fi element happening in a like Castaway noir type.
Yeah.
It felt like they were trying to invoke like the Castaway Island solitude, but also in
isolation.
Right, that isolation aspect. And I think there's only so many ways you can visually represent that without compromising like your capacity to do the sci-fi elements, which is then a lot of the stuff doesn't even necessarily happen on screen. So like I think they do the Scarface, like your mind is a more elaborate construction than we could ever do. So if we just like show you the start, your mind will fill in the rest better than anybody can ever create with CGI at any point in time. So a lot of the sci-fi stuff I think happens in that way, like the island moving or like the fucking wheel that turns.
Yeah.
It's a super basic set. And then it's just like a white light. But that's the implications of that are super high level science fiction when we're talking about time travel, space travel, effectively creating a multiverse.
And they acknowledge that the position of the Earth or the position of the island changes because it's moving all the time.
And they could have gone through way more CGI heavy efforts to try to communicate that. But I think there was some wisdom in how they approached it in trying, like, yeah, the CGI didn't age well, but it never had a chance to age well, especially when the shows were being made. Like all that CGI was terrible because it wasn't the CGI. It was the fact that they were just getting HD cameras and digital cameras, and they didn't know how to create sets that didn't have flat images because it was hard to get the lighting and the makeup correct and then introduce CGI that had the proper lighting and shading. So everything between like 2004 and like 2012 has terrible CGI.
Except for the Matrix.
No, and some of the Matrix has terrible CGI too, which is like even that stuff, like their practical shit is really good, but some of the CGI is like terrible in the second.
Yeah, like the mob of
like,
Smiths.
Oh my God, it's fucking horrible. When Neo's fighting the mob of Smiths, it's like as bad as Blade 2.
You know,
Blade 2's animation is fucking horrible.
I will say, though, that because it's a simulation, that there is a reason that the shading and texture quality would degrade during a fight like that, because the system is dedicating so much power to rendering it.
For sure, you can justify it. You can totally justify
and
it.
Even with unlimited city of machine
but
GPU
that's not
power.
What they were going for.
I know, but
and that's
but even with the unlimited GPU processing of the machine city, they could not render that fight in full detail. That's just what it means.
I mean, did you play the video game though?
Because it was pretty.
The video game didn't have that same problem.
No, it didn't.
It didn't break the aesthetic. Because then, okay, I'll give you another modern example. The Flash. They'll say that the CGI was meant to look that way. Bullshit. They didn't have enough time to fix the fucking shading and the lighting, and then they said that it was a stylistic choice. Bull fucking shit. That's where you can tell when a studio or production crew hits the limitations of their time, when they hit it, not necessarily because they're being like they're aspiring too high. Maybe it was the time crunch, maybe it was the budget, or maybe it was their aspirations that they bit off more than they could chew. But there are things like there's definitely scenes in the Matrix where you're like, or the sequels where it's like, something got cut here. I don't know if it was the time or the budget, but the lighting's not good.
And
the fucking shading's not good.
Which is
the pixels
is Dawn
good.
of Justice the long version of Justice League? Because I remember watching a Justice League movie recently, and it was really long and had like a bunch of extra stuff going on that I didn't remember.
Yeah, I think this is the Dawn of Justice, and then there's the Justice is Gray.
Okay, I watched Dawn of Justice somewhat recently, and during the sequence when the Flash has to run faster than time, it occurred to me that, like, wait a second, this is way cooler looking than that stupid Flash movie's version of running faster than time.
Oh wait, Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Okay, then it's the Justice League, whatever the Justice League one where they fight with Steppenwolf, and they've got there's a scene where Barry's running faster than time, and the sequence is so much better than any of the Flashpoint Paradox stuff we got.
Yeah, I think that is Dawn of Justice when they bring back Superman. Or Zod, right? Or no, it's Superman.
It's Superman. Yeah. So yeah, but the sequence when Barry's running faster than time, it's like there's so much more detail. The lighting is so much more intricate. It's just a better sequence, and they only did it once. But when they made that terrible Flash movie, it wasn't completely terrible. It was a really good Batman movie with Flash in it, taking up way too much screen time in a Batman movie. But when they every time they did it, it just looked like they phoned it in. I don't want to complain too much about it because the story wasn't horrible. It's just they just gave up on all of the running faster than time sequences.
Well, I think it was okay. It was a decent adaptation of Flashpoint. I'm not gonna say it was bad, but knowing that the universe in which it was being built had the capacity to go certain directions, and the directions that they went makes it worse. And I think that's where it's like the choices that they made, and explicitly doing shit like having the George Reeve AI and Christopher Reeve AI and the Supergirl AI. It's like you didn't have to do that, but you chose to do that because you felt like you could. Or having
Kal-El fight the spider, that would have been a good. We got robbed. That would have been a good Superman.
Even forget that they had Jay Garrick, but they had it be some random fucking producer person rather than John Wesley Shipp from the original Flash TV show, who also then portrayed Jay Garrick on the Flash TV show that was I wouldn't even call it a reboot because they connected it to the old Flash.
Yeah.
So like the TV Flash did a better job of constructing a multiverse than the DC movie universe did. But it wasn't because they didn't have the capacity. It was specifically because executives made bad choices. Because at one point, it was executives that requested Ezra Miller be tied into the TV show through an appearance, and they didn't pay it off in the movies. So they did this whole thing where they brought in Ezra Miller on the TV show so that the Justice League movies are part of the TV show universe, but they didn't do it back in the other direction in the movies. So it was completely wasted when they could have, like, the things that they connected. When you're talking about like the Nicolas Cage fighting the spider, it's like they brought him in, they put it that he filmed that wasn't even completely AI, but it looked like trash. So it's like the idea that they brought Nicolas Cage in and what we got looked like they didn't bring Nicolas Cage in. That wasn't on purpose. There's no way they did that shit on purpose because
they just didn't do a good job
ran out
of
of time. Yeah, or it wasn't good and they fucking left it in. So it's those types of decisions where I'm like, I don't know what happened with that film that they thought that was okay, because we know we could have had a better film. Everybody knows we could have had a better film.
I think we got how do I say this? We got the best Michael Keaton Batman 3 that we could have gotten.
Not even, because they had a whole Batgirl script that was focused on.
Oh no, I mean,
Michael Keaton.
They did?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. We didn't even get the best Batman film. They scrapped that shit, bro. And then the Batgirl film that they ended up doing that they scrapped was a stripped down, modified version of the one that originally was meant to be like Michael Keaton training Batgirl. So yeah, no, we didn't even get the best Batman film with Michael Keaton. Yeah, totally, 1,000%. Because we could have gotten Kingdom Come Batman, Michael Keaton. Also, in another, like, there could have been at least two, if not three more Keaton films where he's like passing the torch effectively, and that's like kind of what we got. But he passed the torch to the Flash for whatever reason, and not another Bat person, even though the Flash is now wearing a Bat uniform like the Red Death in the comics, but he's not getting called Red Death, and he's also not a bad guy. So they're taking from all these different
and then he kills himself.
Right, yeah. So it's like, I get when adaptations have to modify the story, but knowing all of the source material that they pulled from and how they butchered all of it and ended up with, like, it's not a 6 out of 10. It's maybe like a 7.5 out of 10. It's not the worst film made. It's definitely not the greatest film made.
No, it's more watchable than Black Widow. It's way more entertaining than Black Widow.
For sure. But Black Widow is easily a 6 out of 10.
I'd say Black Widow's like a 5.
Yeah, 5 or 6, like either one. I wouldn't be mad at giving it a 6. Wouldn't be mad at giving it a 5. But it wasn't the best superhero film this year. Wasn't the worst superhero film this year. So like, it's easy to forget that Quantumania came out this year. If I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
That turd of a film came out this year. It was so bland and so.
Oh man,
mild.
I forgot that there was a Marvel movie that's worse than Black Widow. Holy crap, it was that bad.
Yeah, it's
for years, Solo was the worst Marvel adaptation. The Mario Van Peebles adaptation of Solo, that was the worst Marvel movie I'd ever seen. And for years, I thought, oh, it can't get any worse than that. And then Black Widow happened. But then apparently they made another Ant-Man movie that was so bad, I forgot I watched it.
Yeah. That was one of the most underwhelming movies ever made. So knowing the way that films have been hollowing out their adaptations for this, I don't know who it's for. I don't know why they're doing it or who they're doing it for. It only feels like they're doing it for the executive that made that decision, who thinks that they're making the best decision. And so now that I know David Zaslav is like effectively the worst decision maker that's ever lived, that's had the capacity to make decisions. I don't think I'm the only person that knows that now. So now that WB is potentially about to consume Paramount and still have Zaslav making decisions, even though he's not supposed to be there anymore, this guy is just he is like the death of creative industry. Like, and it's not necessarily a bad thing in that creativity being monetized and being sapped for profit, I guess. If that was going to yield good art, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But the art isn't even good anymore. So this machine that's putting out mediocre and generally bad art and only for the sake of profit, if that thing comes to an end, I'm okay with that, because I don't think people are going to stop making art. So that's where I'm like, this feels like we're seeing the end of people growing up thinking they're going to make money off of art for one reason or another. Like, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because again, I don't think people are going to stop making art for that reason. But if there's always some dumbass fucking executive in the way of art hitting the mainstream and it never gets out without that executive's fucking thumbprint on it, like, we're definitely not going to see this shit for much longer. They can't sustain it. Like, even people are getting sick of Kevin Feige's thumbprint. So it's like, not to say I think Kevin Feige's bad or his thumbprint's bad, but people are sick of it. And that's like undeniable. Like, the numbers do not lie on that issue. So whatever people want to call it or whatever reason, that executive thumbprint is like less and less viable for a big business, I think.
I really like the. Have you seen any of the second season of What If?
I have not started that yet. I just saw the release, so
I won't say anything
definitely.
about it, but other than I really, really, really love the What If series because it's new stories with powers that I have expectations about, but I have no idea what they're going to do with it. And it's the most refreshing content outside of Loki, which I still think is so impressive that they figured out a way to get rid of Jonathan Majors without having to actually get rid of him, even though they still had to get rid of him. But the What If series is the most refreshing stuff. It's the best. It's the best stuff that I've seen come out of Marvel.
I really always liked the What If stuff because the series was always about exploring possibilities within a universe that's already like a creative universe. But then the comic books were never really valuable because it wasn't anything that was canon ever. So I think like reading What If stuff, it was like easier to read it for fun. And like, I'm sure some people did, but it was never really a collector's book because none of them were ever super valuable.
Yeah.
So like, that's where I think this element of the TV series is cool, that they still have that in, like, it feels fun.
I mean, yeah. You got to watch the third episode before Christmas. That's all I'm going to say. Seriously.
Oh shit! Did they do multiple episode drop? I only saw one.
Well, there's 3, but you have to watch the third one before Christmas. That's all I'm gonna say. No, I'm serious. That's like, it's super important that you watch the 3rd episode before Christmas.
Got it. All right, you got homework. Fun homework.
No. Truly, this is the best damn assignment. Watch the 3rd episode of the 2nd season of What If before Christmas. It's so easy.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, by the way. Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Well, that was random. Exceptional Randos.